Find a better scouting report. Cars going live with the smartest man, my bestie. Deciphering holes on the defense like Getsy. New show, uniforms, orange with the dark sea. Tape never lies, patrons, this is Cars Keys.
You know it's Cars Keys, let's get it started up. Give me the car keys. Lakeshore Drive, blog boys drive away with our texts like car thieves. Breakdown, we study tape and thrive. We gotta break down tape like detectives. No hot takes, just real football perspectives. The Bears nerd dropping science on his terms. TTNL giving Bears press like a perm. Other networks is off with the heads. Stats plus film equals football cred. Analysis like Data Ted tries to shred. McCaskey's letting me cake, we keep the 100 crew fed. Cars Keys, let's get it started up. Give me the car keys. Lakeshore Drive, blog boys drive away with our texts like car thieves. Breakdown, we study tape and thrive. Lord Hines in his car, fill up a goblet. Lord Hines in his car, fill up a goblet.
Hey, helps if I hit the button. Welcome back. TTNL is back. Cars Keys Season 1, Episode 19 already. That's kind of crazy. We took a little bit of a break here. I'll just update all of you guys real quick on what's going on. We didn't do a Keeping It 100 this week, which is extremely rare. There was no Keeping It Fantasy. But Cars and I, we showed up. Didn't we, Cars? We showed up. But no, our guy DDP is dealing with some sickness. He's under the weather himself. So there's going to be a little bit change to the schedule this week. No Keeping It 100. We decided to give everybody the night off. There's not going to be any DDP breakdown this week because he's still battling a little bit. So it's more important that he get rested up and we finish this season strong and get the number 2 or number 1 pick overall, right? We'll see what happens. But got to bring out my guy here. He has a sponsor tonight for his appearance. It's brought to you by Hyundai Oil Filters, sponsoring Mr. Cars himself. There he is. Got a sponsor, big boy.
Never again are we buying a Hyundai. If anybody knows probably a good attorney, please reach out to me off the show. But yeah.
An eventful week away from TTNL, I think, for all of us, Cars, just like we expect each and every week. If it's not sickness, it's World War III, and if it's not World War III, it's oil filters, right?
I mean, it's everything. If it weren't, what's the old phrase? If it weren't for bad luck, we'd have no luck at all. So yeah,
ain't that the truth?
It's been something, but hard to believe that we're sitting here with 2 weeks to go left in the season, and that there's like the biggest competition right now is for the number one draft pick.
Yeah, there's light at the end of the tunnel, like they say, but this light is extra bright, and it's extra bright because we have a quarterback, and it's extra bright because we can lock up the number 2 or the number 1 pick. That doesn't listen. We all know, and people that want to win one of the games or both of the games, whatever, you can have your opinion, and that's fine. I understand you guys know me by now. I look at the broader scope, the bigger picture. And if I can put Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears franchise in the most powerful position heading into the NFL draft in terms of draft capital, I think that's going to help this team moving forward. But that doesn't mean that the work is done, Cars, as you well know. You have to hit. You can't just trade down and pick mediocre players. You have to hit, and you have to hit multiple times the way that this roster is constructed. But real quick, before we get into the football talk too, there is something on the screen that is a little bit different. That at Wasram, that is the name that Cars met me with way back in 95 or 96, Cars.
Yeah.
That was my old Twitter handle. And after almost a 2-year respite where they suspended me for some ridiculousness, I reapplied and they gave it back to me the other night. And so I am going to.
You and Andrew Tate got your Twitter back.
Yeah, I didn't get arrested though. That's why I said Elon wanted pizza for dinner tonight. I said, fuck that. They're not gonna put me in a corner. But no, I'm gonna. If you guys follow me on Twitter, I was using the @ShaneMarsaw app, but I'm gonna go back to my original account moving forward. So make sure that you are following that. It's one that I've had since 2009. So got a lot of good and bad takes in that one, Cars. So I'm gonna move forward with it, so you can search it up and find everything that I was wrong about.
I mean, I would, but that's all analytics, and we don't really like to do that around these parts. So
that's why sick. That's why Phil is sick, Cars.
So we will. Well done. We will talk through all of it. But yeah, I mean, it's good to see you back in the original. I never could get used to your full name again.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan.
No, it just didn't feel like every time I would tweet at you, I felt like I was a parent and you were in trouble, and I was.
Yeah, if you guys thought Shane Marsaw was a smart ass, you wait till you catch what Wasram does.
I mean, he's a big fan of people's moms. That's all.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm still gonna call people's mom cunts. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't care if it's 2023. We're still gonna move forward with it. But
perfect. We're about 2 minutes in, and the first one has happened. So yeah. I'm thrilled here.
Oh man, but no, it's exciting. Like I said, man, I do understand both sides of the fence that people are on. Winning is the ultimate cure-all, but I just, at this point, when you have 3 wins, to me, there's not a big difference between 3 wins, 4 wins, or 5 wins. It's a poor season no matter what. And if I can get all the bullets in the chamber to give myself the most ammunition moving forward, I think that's probably the best avenue to take. And Cars, I mean, 3-4 weeks ago, we weren't sitting here. Everything was about number 2. Number 1 overall pick is completely in play. And I want to say that there's people out there that, not just that it's in play, but I think that there's people in there that are kind of expecting it at this point, because Houston's been knocking on the door. They pushed it in last week, but now they're going to be playing Indy, and who knows what they're going to be doing at quarterback. Is it still going to be Nick Foles? I mean, Nick Foles was a turnover machine the other night, but if they finish with 3 wins like the Bears do, that tie kills them. Yeah, kills them for the number 1 pick. And
I think they've got an outside shot against Jacksonville. I know they've been playing well, but the next 2 weeks for them are pretty good. Now, I thought that Detroit would have been competing for a playoff spot more, and then they went out and laid an absolute turd.
They Detroited it. Let's be honest. Yeah,
they got too big for their own britches and Detroited it. But I think what's going to be interesting there for us is, we're coming off of back-to-back weeks against 2 very good defenses. Now, Detroit's defense isn't very good, but their defensive line is better, and that has been the part that's been terrifying. But then it's Minnesota, and Minnesota, I'm sorry, I don't see it. And so if I'm worried that we're going to win a game to cost us, it's going to be that game.
Corey Wooten had an interesting take. His take was Justin Fields is going to be playing in a controlled environment. Obviously weather is not a factor this week in Detroit. If you get Claypool back, you give them another week on turf to work together. Justin Fields has come out and one of the few players that has said he much prefers to play on turf than on a natural surface. And Corey Wooten said that he would 100% play him.
Oh yeah.
And then the final game of the season, he would have the mysterious flu, the tweaked ankle, tweaked the shoulder in practice, and then you set him down versus Minnesota. Eberflus came out, and I wouldn't take what he is saying in terms of that, that they have no plans to set him down. To me, that's a lot of poker playing. They're not gonna let on at all. But Cars, you go out and Houston wins this week.
You're choking.
And Chicago loses. I cannot see any way possible that they're going out there with Justin Fields at quarterback.
They'll leave him out there. But what we've also seen the last couple of weeks is they really do take the foot off the gas pedal in that second half, right? So they kind of come out, they fight for the first half, they show everybody what they're capable of, and then they kind of take the foot off. So they'll play. I don't have any doubt, him seeing looks, and I know a few people saw my YouTube video. Don't worry, I'm not quitting the show for my burgeoning YouTube channel.
Blaming it on your family.
Yeah, that I can't do any of that stuff with. But so I think they are doing a pretty good job of showing just enough and then kind of easing up. I wouldn't say that they're full on tanking, but I would say that there seems to be a little bit lesser of an emphasis on the win, and I think we all know why. I think, Shane, your earlier point. The biggest difference between a 3-win and a 5-win team is you're going to go from top 3 to 7, 8, 9, 10 range if you're in that 5 pick. And for a team like us that that we kind of talked about last week, that isn't in a place where they can just go out and hit one home run. They've got to go out and hit multiple doubles and triples to kind of make this work. Any win, my belief is, and I think this is kind of the way that they believe it in the organization, is that any win now kind of slows down the rebuild for next year.
Oh, Cars, you and I have been around this game a long time to know the difference, and everybody got excited. We saw the trade scenarios put out there today, for DeAndre Hopkins, and then the one for
Devante.
Yeah, Devante Adams, and people are like, "Oh, sign me up!" And I'm like, "That is the Devante Adams trade was an absolutely horrific trade for the Chicago."
The Hopkins one was the worst.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
going back, we were giving them a 5th round pick and our first for a 1 and Hopkins.
But I was more so looking at it. You drop into 9, and yes, you're gaining Devante Adams, but as good as he is, you have to. I think he's got a lot of good years left, but you have to take into consideration that he's a 30-year-old player. Just turned 30, but he's got the contract and the compensation. When you're talking about from moving to 9 to 6. It's not that bad. But when you're talking going from number 9 to number 2 or to number 1, no. It's taken a lot more than Devante Adams. I'm sorry to tell you.
I mean, that's one of the things we've kind of hammered on in this draft, and what everybody needs to realize. and I love repeating myself as frequently as possible, but if you're trading up to the number, let's just say the Bears end up number 2, which still is probably the pretty likely scenario. If a team is trading up to number 2 to get CJ Stroud versus if a team, or Will Anderson because a pass rusher is there, versus if a team is trading up to get a Jalen Carter or an offensive line, the first 2 positions I listed gets you an extra first round pick.
Yeah.
Usually bare minimum. And usually when it comes to rookie deals, you start to see 3 first round picks go. That's what happened with Trey Lance, right? And so there are a lot of different plays that works. So when you see these guys giving up just a 1 and a very good player, that's still not going to be enough to get the value. The team right now, I would focus on the absolute most.
Down south.
And thank you to the San Francisco 49ers for making this more of a possibility, is the Carolina Panthers. Yep. They have 2 seconds. They have 2 thirds. They've got, depending on what they want to do, they've got a couple players here or there. But because the Panthers really fleeced the 49ers as far as value for McCaffrey, they are now the team that is best set up to make a move for us. That really helps, because if you can look at this team and you get a first, a second, and a third this year,
right,
and a first next,
and then you're that's called cooking with gas.
You're running, because you've got a top 10 pick. You've got a second half, top 10 pick in the second round. You've got a third round pick in the third round. You're going to have a lot of these high picks. And again, when we trade down once, the value in this draft starts to come again later after 15. So if the Bears drop to 9, let's just say, or 8 where Carolina is, you could see a second trade back for another team that falls hot and heavy. And so these are the things that we watch. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen with a forward-thinking organization, you come out of this with 6 extra draft picks over the next 2 years.
Yeah, but it's not just draft picks; it's premium draft picks.
Very good point.
Draft picks up top,
because that
we had a lot of draft picks this past draft. We did not have premium picks.
That's a very good way to put it. Yes, and if you look at it, right, CJ Stroud is not going to be a big difference maker for the Carolina Panthers. Now they're going to be where we were with Justin Fields this past year. They have a couple better parts, but for the most part, they're going to be pretty bad. So now all of a sudden, you're in a position where if you struggle, or you're kind of guaranteed a top 10 pick with Carolina, and then your pick is probably somewhere 15, 20, in that range. So now you've got 2 picks again the next year. And can you just keep doing this? Can you keep making these things happen? It gets really number 1. If we get to number 1, I think you are going to look at just a ridiculous draft haul.
Totally agree, Cars. And that's when you have to look back and you say to yourself, is beating Detroit or is beating Minnesota really worth it? Maybe in the moment you feel really good about it, but when that time comes in April and you're looking at a team that's drafted number 1 or drafted number 2, and you're looking at the compensation that is going to be available to them in potential trade down scenarios, or even if you stand pat, Cars, when you're talking about Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, there's a drop. I mean, a lot of people are just there's a drop. I mean,
big time,
a big one. So there's so many different ways that this can go, but Carolina is one that you have to circle and be very, very interested in, because I mean, you also have to study their rosters. They have a pass rusher. If you
Brian
want to
Burns.
If you want to, and I know they turned down a Hall, but you have to look. This is going to be a whole new setup in there, and if whoever is coming in and doing their thing, quarterback quarterback, man. They're gonna be in that game. And the thing that I love about it, and what you brought up is absolutely key. I'm not sold on any of these quarterbacks in this draft this year. None of them. No. I'm an Alabama guy, and I'm not sold. You know my thoughts on Bryce Young. I'm not sold. So I'm looking at that.
His size terrifies me.
Whew. Yeah, you're talking sub 5'11" and 180 pounds.
But I think to your point, when you talk about meaningless games, winning a stupid, meaningless game cost the New York Jets Trevor Lawrence, and it stuck them, which should have been Justin Fields. Yeah. But because they weren't at number 1, they drafted Zach Wilson. And that's because they beat a very bad Detroit team that they had no business doing that for. And it cost them. And that is going to cost their entire rebuild, because they have now been set back by 2 to 3 years because of that miss. So
you go back to 98, and I believe the Bears had one win with like 3 or 4 games left. And then they finished the season. I think they won 3 out of 4. And what happened? Who was number 1 in 98? Peyton Manning. That was the whole Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf debate. But even then, it was Andre Wadsworth was a defensive end that everybody was in love with out of Florida State. Charles Woodson was up there. Randy Moss was up there. The Bears, in typical fashion, can't come away with Curtis Enos. But those are the things that you have to take into consideration, and people don't want to hear it. I see people praising Will Anderson, and fabulous. Love the player, love the motor. But Cars, you talked about it last week. Is that too much of a luxury? Are you willing to give up Will Anderson if you believe in your process, if you believe in your GM? Are you willing to take Will Anderson and move forward with him and give up the prospects of 2 number 1s, 2 number 2s, a third rounder? It's going to be an interesting scenario. And I mean, Ian Cunningham and Ryan Poles have been through this already. They know they know.
You're right.
They pretty much know if they're staying, if they're who they're gonna take. Listen, at this point,
it's already. I think they know they're not staying. But I think you're exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So man, it's gonna be a real fun off season.
And this is exactly why you can't. And I'm going to show a few videos that we'll talk about. We're doing this on the fly, by the way, Shane. I'm going to throw a few clips up here.
We'll clean it up in post.
Yeah, no big deal. But, when you look at the way that we're being defended right now, the biggest, as much as we need a 3-tech on defense, as much as you need a left tackle, you right now have a Ferrari in the garage with a Hyundai oil filter on it, and you can't let it go. Teams are getting to Justin 4-man pass rush versus 5 blockers right now is beating our quarterback. The whole reason that the offense looks the way is somewhat what we showed you last week. They are rushing 4. They are dropping 7 into coverage to keep everything in front of, everyone's eyes on Justin, so he can't make the play. With Claypool out, it will look a little different. If Mooney were still here and Claypool were still here, it would look different. But right now, and Alex, this is a great point, 5 warm bodies, not even blockers, with 5 warm bodies and maybe even half warm at that. You can't tell me that as great as Will Anderson is, do I think he's going to have a multiple all-pro career? I really do. I think he's got an incredible ceiling, but you cannot, if you're not helping Justin, then this next year is lost. And so I understand that there's a lot that's going to happen in free agency. We've talked a lot about certain names.
Yeah.
But that's why I keep going. It is a luxury pick to get a Will Anderson. As much as I love Jalen Carter, it is a luxury pick right now to get Jalen Carter unless we can get them in a trade back.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. It's going to be so interesting. It's really uncharted territory, Cars. It is for this time. I think last time the Bears had the number 1 pick in the draft, what did they say? 1947.
Yes.
I think there's something like that. So it's, if you believe in Justin Fields like we obviously do here, not winning a couple of games at the end of the season, I don't think is going to. I don't think it's going to set us back too much at all. And I'm pulling up.
If you had asked us before, a couple of games, the Detroit game that we were all in, once that game to me was lost, it didn't make a whole lot of sense to win, because
no, I get it.
Once you got there, if you won that game, you could kind of pivot up and get probably with confidence to 6-7 wins and say, see, we built on this, we did this. But once that game was lost, and we really have to thank the refs for a large part of that as well, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to go win. Because in this draft, I keep saying it, but in this draft, once you get past really Will Anderson for me, but for the draft prognosticators, it's going to be once you get past Anderson, Stroud, and Young.
There's a separation.
There's nobody else. The guy you get at 4 and the guy you get at 24 are going to be somewhat the same. So you push yourself into no man's land for a team that really needs the picks. Now, we can't go do that stupid T. Higgins trade that somebody threw up there, which is the worst.
Throw this up there. Let me just switch this around. Maybe it'd be a little bit easier. I know it's probably too hard for you guys to see, but
and again, the thing, and while you're doing that, the thing that gets really important for this is that 3,000 point value.
Yep.
That's for a traditional guy. I'll tell you right now, the way that past trades have happened, if it's a quarterback number 1,
it's higher.
Value is like 5,000 to 6,000.
Right, but what's important, I'm just saying, so from number 1 to number 2, that there's a 400 point difference. So you go to this chart and you look at 400 points. That's the 50th overall pick.
Yep.
In the draft overall. So that's second round, number 50. That's just going from number 1 to number 2. So you're talking about, let's just say you drop back to
8, where Carolina is.
Right. Yeah. So number 8. So that's 1,400 points.
1,600, right? Is that 1,600 points?
Oh, yeah. Yes. No. It's 1,400. Number 8.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yep. So number 8 overall is worth 1,400 points. Number 1 is 3,000. So, I mean, and listen, they're not going point by point. This is just giving them a blueprint.
There's wiggle room. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're talking about a Brian Burns being thrown in there, and I mean, that was the talk with the Devante Adams, with the Bears falling back to, where were they? Was it number 9? Yeah, so with the Bears falling back there, that puts Devante Adams' value
at 18,
approximately like the 14th overall pick. And you have to take everything into consideration. If Devante Adams was 25 years old, 24 years old,
you take that all day.
Yeah, you get it. But when you're 30 and you're talking a premium pick, you can't fall all the way back to number 9 from number 1 or from number 2 and only come away with Devante Adams. You just can't.
And something that when I made a tweet about the cost, and Adam Rank had said, would he force himself out? A Raiders fan had showed that Devante Adams had liked a tweet that said he got generational money and is able to play close to home. I still think this is a win for him. And Devante liked that. I don't know necessarily. The only way that they're going to move out from him is if he's going to force himself out. Because if they want a young quarterback, understand that he's 30. You're not going to get rid of that kid. You're going to give him the best weapon he can have.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about just 2 weapons there. I mean, you talk about Waller and and Adams. I mean, those are two big pieces to give a young
and Renfro
and Renfro. Yeah, exactly.
Every good young quarterback has had, Dallas Clark when it was with Peyton, right? Like you have a good little outlet valve to a tight end that's a mismatch. And if you've got two wide receivers that can work multiple levels of the field, it's a win for the Raiders, but it's the Raiders, so they'll find a way to screw this up. But
Creighton, absolutely not. No, that's not even. I'm not giving. I mean, if you want to,
I would take more and still get the rest of my draft.
Oh yeah, but he's not. If you're talking the Devante Adams deal that was proposed,
oh God, no,
because you're just I think you're basing that off of age, date of birth. The difference there. But no way. That is a phone call that they make to you.
He's not the player that Adams is.
No, but that's when you say I'll talk to you when you want to give me a serious offer and hang the phone up. I mean that's what happens there. You listen, you guys have heard me say over and over and over again that you have to have the ability to play poker. And that's why I always poke fun at Phil all the time that if he was the head coach and I was the GM, I would not have him in the room when we're doing, trade and shit like that, because I said you have to have the ability to sit back and just be you can't be like, fuck it, give them what they want. You get me my running back, get me my short wide receiver that runs a 4.7. Can't do it. You have to have the ability to play hardball, and when you're in a position of power like the Bears are going to be at number 1 or number 2, you have to wield that power.
You have to. And Cornelius, this is a comment that you kind of see from a lot of people. Absolutely. I think Anderson is more guaranteed to be more generational.
I don't think either. I think Phil and I talked about this, and like I said, it's not to step on your toes here, Cars. I would put neither of them in generational category to me.
So I wouldn't put Carter. I think Anderson has that capability, but you cannot put one position. I mean, if you list it out right now, what does the team need? They need 3 offensive linemen.
Yep.
They need a defensive end. They need a 3 technique. They need a weak side linebacker.
Let's be honest. They need 2 defensive ends from my vantage point.
True.
They need 2 starters.
They need how many wide receivers do you think? 2, 3?
You need an alpha, and then you need another one. Yeah, you need another Darnell Mooney type. Yeah. That's why
you're talking about 9 players basically that you need.
Yeah, and I mean, you have to throw tight end in there. Nobody talks about it, and everybody wants to think that. We've talked about it, but it's not talked about enough. I mean, that is where in free agency, I think that is absolutely key, that you go after one of those guys.
Yeah, and absolutely. And El Nino, Terry's not going anywhere.
No.
I don't know if you've seen any of the videos or anything, but that dude is the heart and soul of that franchise. He will not go. Elijah Moore is a nice player. But it's not a thing. I think what gets interesting, and again, it'll be really fun to sit down and talk through on when we start talking draft time, because I think this, again, when you look at the draft and the way that it's going on, Will Levis is going to move way up for some reason.
Oh, happens. He is the
Kyle Bowler 2.0.
Yeah, people fall in love with the arm talent, and that guy can spin it in bad weather. Well, I don't give a shit if you can spin it in bad weather. You better be able to deliver it to where it's going and process what you see in front of you. Did anybody see Jamarcus Russell's arm talent? I'm not sure we've ever seen it ever before, his arm talent, but that's where it ended.
Ryan Leaf was the same way, right? Had this crazy, if folks don't know that 98 draft, people were picking on the Colts saying that they missed a once in a lifetime talent to pick a more middle of the road guy, which again shows you just how poorly scouted and coached the QB position is.
Yeah.
But if that guy moves up, when all these things move up, all it does for the Bears is increase the value of the picks that they have and allows them to sit down and really reload. This offseason, between free agency and everything, is going to tell you whether we can compete in 2 years for a title or if it's in 3 years for a title.
Yep.
That's the way that I'm viewing this, is if they go through and just pick where they are and they get Will Anderson and they get someone really good in round 2 and they just maintain those picks, we're not winning or not competing for a championship for 3 years.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's you have one of those, weighted scales and you're setting Will Anderson on one side and then the bounty of picks. But that's the thing. Just because you have that bag full of picks, you can't come away with Adam Shaheen. You can't come away with Kevin White. You can't come away with Chris Williams. That is the ultimate separator, and that goes back to the.
You can't go get Trey Lance, right? No. You can't harvest all those picks and trade up for Tua. And I understand that Tua's had a good year, but there's the red flags there are massive. And so when you take these big swings, you can't trade up, for in back-to-back drafts for Mitch and for Leonard Floyd and then have neither of those two make it to a second contract.
Right.
That's what gets you killed in this league. That's what sets you back. You can't draft a quarterback in round 1 when you've got Aaron Rodgers and a whole bunch of other holes and hope that that's going to work itself out.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I always look back to the Kevin White. So, at the time there was my biggest concern, Cars, you and I talked about it a ton of times, is the 4.3
never
40
showed up.
Never showed up on tape ever. So that is a huge red flag. But at least they followed Kevin White up that year with Eddie Goldman. Now, we know what's happened with Eddie Goldman now, but he was an excellent second-round pick at the time that played and contributed at a very high level. But what makes the Mitch trade, you went up one spot and you had such a separation between Deshaun Watson wasn't going to be a Bear in the draft. I mean, it was 2 quarterbacks. The Bears had. Listen, let's be honest. It sounds like to me that if the Bears didn't make the trade, and if for whatever reason somebody traded up to number 2, or if San Francisco said we're taking a quarterback, which they wouldn't have then, but if Mitch had went number 2, not to Chicago, it sounds like the Bears were in the quarterback game anyway, and they would have drafted Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
He was their number 2 quarterback, but they had such a separation they needed to make.
And I still think the scouts wanted someone else, because what we've always heard in this room is there were people like, we believe in this player, and then he would go draft his own guy.
Yeah. But then what did he do after he picked Mitch? He fucking followed it up with Adam Shaheen. And I mean, that made me ill when I saw that pick come across. I remember listening to Gil Brandt on NFL radio just a few days before. They're talking about sleepers, and he's like, I'll give you a name that a lot of people love at tight end that nobody's talking about, and that's Shaheen. And that's, Adam Shaheen, and that's somebody's going to take him earlier than you expect him to go. And I remember saying to myself, well, my team ain't going to take a tight end. Not in the second round there. I'm
Lord
thinking
Chipotle.
I'm thinking like 4th, 5th round, maybe. But that was the fault. You made the ultimate error, and then you followed it up with one that's just about as egregious.
I mean, it was inexcusable when it happened. I
Yeah.
remember sitting there, and obviously I don't do as much as you and Phil do, but I had no idea who this guy was. I
Mhm.
hadn't watched anything, and then when you watch the first video and you watch him run, you're kind of like,
Yeah, we drafted Lurch.
I mean, it
That's
was
yeah.
it was pretty terrible. It was
Yeah,
pretty terrible.
you draft a tight end that high, you're thinking a uber athletic guy like a Kyle Pitts. You know what I mean? That's what you have in your brain. And you see Adam Shaheen, you're like, we just drafted and everybody wanted to force feed that he was, Kelsey and all of this nonsense. And the Bears even gave him number 87. You remember that?
Do you remember them trying to
Or
talk?
Gronk, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Baby Gronk.
Baby
That's what they
Gronk.
called him.
And they wanted him. They were trying to hype him so bad. And I don't know if
Yep.
you remember during training camp, they were pulling. Was it Lance Briggs? And they're trying to talk about they're trying to talk about the two guys showing up, and everybody talked about Tariq Cohen.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, yeah, Shaheen's looking pretty good too. And they're like, yeah, but that Cohen guy, like even they knew he wasn't the guy.
Yeah, and I mean players know. We
within
thought
seconds.
Yeah, we had Olin on here. Who was it? Olin? Oh, it was Shane Matthews.
Shane Matthews about Cade. Yeah.
I said, what was your he's like, my exact, like within the first 15 minutes was their first round pick. This dude, this motherfucker doesn't have an arm. He can't throw. Can you imagine that being your first time you see this guy? But I mean, you want to talk about bad morale or chemistry within your locker room. That stagnates it immediately. Our leaders this is their answer to the most critical position in all of sports. Let's be honest.
And if
this guy, and he can't throw. And
if he was at least a likable team player, that's one thing. Cade was never well liked by anyone.
Oh, no. And he wasn't. If you remember when they drafted Cade, Eric Kramer was still on the roster, but he had some issues with his neck.
Yep.
And I remember when the Bears released Eric Kramer, instantly in my brain, I'm like, holy shit, we're starting a rookie quarterback. Well, I think that's what the Bears wanted. But Cade was such a fucking blowhard. Nobody liked the guy. And then along comes Jim Miller, but Jim Miller couldn't stay healthy. And then you saw, the Shane Matthews and all of that. And it's just, oh my God, it's so typical Chicago. And I said, this is the thing that's always important here, too, Cars, is we're talking about the draft. We're talking about draft picks and free agency and free agency money. We can't forget about Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Because that makes, listen, when you're talking about it's going to be a 3-year rebuild, if he takes another huge leap next year, you can't put a cap on. You just don't know. You give him a weapon and you give him a couple offensive linemen and they have whatever. Those games that you lost right at the end, you sneak them the other way. That's what is so great about football. I don't think there's any real blueprint to it, but the one tried and true thing is if you have a quarterback each and every year that you go out there that you can rely on, you're always competing, and you're always competing most of the time, for a playoff spot.
Yeah.
And everything else is so much easier to fill in around it.
I mean, look at Green Bay. I love to pick on them, but they've had Bakhtiari, Devante Adams, and Aaron Rodgers, and that has been enough to keep them in. Their defenses have not been good. They have drafted 47 dudes at corner and safety. One has worked out. They drafted, and finally Rashawn Gary worked out as a pass rusher, but they have missed more than anybody. But because of 12-17, with whatever Bakhtiari's number is blocking on the backside, they have been in the playoffs more than they've not. So you're absolutely right.
Yep. And you think you bringing up Bakhtiari reminds me of talking to Corey Wooten, and Corey Wooten said he's watched, he's a former defensive lineman. Bears drafted him out of Northwestern. I forget what year it was, but he at one point was a guy that was talked about a first rounder, and then he tore up his knee and he ended up, I think the Bears took him in round 4. But he's been breaking down tape and watching, talking about guys in the draft, and he's been talking about he was watching Braxton Jones, and they were saying, what about him? And he said when he sees Braxton Jones, he sees David Bakhtiari. And what he meant by that, he goes, when he first came into the league,
Bakhtiari was not great.
No, the way that you beat him was with a bull rush. And what do we see with Braxton Jones? Power kills him because he doesn't have the strength. And this is what I'm saying, and this is what fans and it's easy for me to forget about it too, is you have a guy like Braxton Jones, you have a guy like Justin Fields, you have Chase Claypool in this offseason with the team, with the quarterback, learning the playbook more, Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney, depending on what they do at running back. But you have to look at growth internally and factor that in, because you look at David Bakhtiari from year 1 to year 2,
it was night and day. He was being a
night and day.
Guy.
And like I said, I always forget, is it Southern Utah State or
Southern Utah?
Yeah, Southern Utah that he comes from. Now he's going to be locked in Hallis Hall in a weight program with their sports science people, putting all the proper fuel into his body that he should be doing each and every day. And he's going to maximize his body potential, which is going to transform him on the field. That bull rush he's not going to get beat every time by it.
But this is exactly why that combination comes up. Bakhtiari was a great athlete.
Right.
So is Braxton. You guys have to understand that they are literally on some running plays pulling Braxton Jones from left tackle all the way across to the right-hand side to get into running lanes from your tackle. He is being asked to basically run a power sweep to go clear blockers out, understanding that he has his flaws. But when you look at his athleticism, his body placement, his hands where it's supposed to be, the technique portions are there, but it is the strength that's missing. So maybe it's not left tackle. Maybe if they get someone else, I think you and I have talked a few times about this.
Yeah.
But he's a guy I think that you have to figure out. I think he's going to be the left tackle because I think it makes the most amount of sense for his athleticism and his profile.
Yeah.
And they'll figure out how to maximize the rest of it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if you gave them a truth serum, they're never going to admit it otherwise. But I think that, listen, they're writing things down in pencil. If
I think they're
if somebody comes available that you're like, oh shit, we weren't. Yeah. Well, you saw it. Yeah. What did Laramie Tunsil come out and say?
I want to
reset the market. And I mean, I understand that you don't want to remove your left tackle if you're in the quarterback game, Cars, but we also talked about Houston being an interesting team that if the Bears are at number 1 or if the Bears are at number 2 and Houston's at number 1, neither one of us believe that it's locked in stone that they're going quarterback at number 1.
No, because they're a type of team that would look at both of these guys with the same amount of questions. Davis Mills is I know he got benched, but I really feel like they just don't have.
But they have that second first round pick, and would they say to themselves, we'll get the defender that we want. We'll get Will Anderson up top. We'll get Jalen Carter up top. And then we're going to double back with that next first rounder, give up future assets and a player. I'm not saying that it's not likely, but I mean, if you're talking dropping back to where they are and they're putting Laramie Tunsil in the deal, You're not turning that down.
Oh God, no! Especially when you look at some of the future picks that they've got.
Yeah.
Next year, I want to say that they've got the Browns pick, their pick. They've got a bunch of picks this year. So they're a team that, we remember when San Francisco, the belief was, they might sit down and draft Solomon Thomas, and then they'll trade up to draft, I can't remember the linebacker from Alabama.
Oh, it was, he ended up going late.
At the end of the first round, but then ended up getting arrested and basically kicked out of the league. They're one of the teams right now that is in that you could see a place where they draft Will Anderson, trade up for Bryce Young, and we could sit down and take advantage of that. It's Reuben Foster. Thank you, Vincent.
Yep.
I'm credit where credit's due. Thank you, Vincent. But I don't know. It's sadly, it's the excitement I have instead of watching the football team right now is thinking of all the possibilities. But it's kind of where we are right now.
What is their second pick in the first round? Are they right around 13 or?
Yeah, because the Browns are having such a bad year right now. They're at 11. They're at 11 right now.
All right. So, but you're going back there and you're picking up premium picks, and odds are they wouldn't move off of Tunsil if they're going to get in the quarterback game. But I mean, that doesn't prevent you from demanding him in the trade. And I mean, if you're talking quarterback, if they're absolutely in love with a quarterback, they should probably take him at number 1. But in this scenario, I just don't think it's out of the question that they could be a team on the move to come up. And like you just said, come away with the duo from Alabama. Now, if it was me, I'm
the reverse though, because they could go quarterback number 1.
Sure.
And pay a little bit less of a overpay to get to number 2 to get Anderson. Yeah. That is still in play as well.
Yeah, and either one of them. But I'm just, long story short, this was my thing of saying that those are the types of scenarios that can happen where you're like, all right, Braxton, we're going to put you over here. If we feel that Laramie Tunsil is our foundational piece at left tackle moving forward, we're going to put you over here at right tackle, and that's when you move him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So, but this is the point. You're not going to have that option at number 4. No. At number 5. Maybe not
3.
Even at number 3. Right.
Maybe.
Exactly.
It's the latest you could potentially fall. And so I hate losing. And these are proud people. They don't go through and do this, because they want to, but they're at the point that they have to. Winning an extra game costs you Trevor Lawrence. Winning an extra game cost us Aaron Donald, right? I mean, winning
you look at the Kevin White.
Yep.
We were all screaming for Leonard Williams.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people. From what I heard,
it's a good point.
It was never going to be Leonard Williams. I heard the guy that Pace actually wanted was the offensive lineman that went to Washington.
Oh, Scherf. Yeah.
Scherf. That's what I had heard. If it's true or not, but those are the things. Aaron Donald, you come away. He 100% was going to be a Bear.
Oh, yeah.
If he was there. Done deal, run it to the podium. You got Kyle Fuller. You got a nice player. But, Brother John Gray, I know this is the second time you came late, I think, to the show. We've talked about that. And the Raiders trade for you to go from number 2 to number 9 and only pick up Devante Adams. That is a horrific trade for the Chicago Bears. If that's all you come away with, you lose all value for your shitty season you just went through and for your premium draft pick. It's got to be much more than just Devante Adams. That's a home run deal. Yeah. Next year.
First next year, it's got to be a second this year. It's got to be a 4th or 5th this year, plus a 4th or 5th the next year, maybe a possibility to be a 3rd. But when it's a quarterback, you hold out for everything. When it is a quarterback, normally it's kind of a buyer's market. But when it's for a quarterback, it is a seller's market, and you cannot ask for too little, right?
Yeah, and they're going to show. You're going to see what Stidham does this week. Derek Carr is done in Vegas. I mean, the way that's unfolding. So Vegas has painted themselves into a corner, essentially, and it's what other avenue can they take? I mean, they got to be? What's their cap number?
So I mean, they've got space. They've got $34 million, and when they cut Derek Carr,
so they're going to pick up.
They're going to save another $29 million. So they can.
But my point is, if they get involved, we don't know what's going to happen at quarterback in Baltimore. Somebody like that hits the market, they're going to. To me, you have to take all of that space and be a player there.
Yeah,
with Lamar.
I think that's going to be this offseason. The domino of dominoes is going to be Lamar. I mean, whatever happens there sets everything up. And I think you can't. I don't think Baltimore is going to want him to stay in the AFC.
Right.
I think they'd want to move him to the
point.
NFC. But I see this a lot. Shane and my take has always been, if they wanted him to be there, if they wanted him, why is he not signed? Why is he not there? And I think raises a lot of doubt.
I think it has played out with what they have been expecting the entire time, that you're going to get hurt.
Yep.
And this is where they're at. It's just, I mean, you're exactly right, Cars. You're not flirting with that position at all. If you are 100% sold on the guy and you have conviction with him that he is the guy that's going to take you to the next level. And I mean, he's been a guy that has put up fantastic numbers, but is it just because of money? I don't think so. I think it's money is obviously part of it, but I just don't think that. I really feel like Baltimore believes we're going to pay this kid and then he's going to fall apart physically.
Because the way I look at it, Shane, is in the 2018 draft, the guys who have been really worth. Josh Allen has already signed his extension.
Yep.
Right. I think Colton Miller has signed his extension.
Yep.
So the guys that have really been worth it, Calvin Ridley has done his. The guys who have not, whether it's Mayfield, Darnold, haven't. Denzel Ward has already signed his contract extension.
Yep.
You don't let these guys that you believe into go into that last year, because what you're afraid of is they have that next year, and all of a sudden that $40 million a year for Lamar becomes $50. So you do everything you can to get these guys lined up, especially at a premium position. Lamar Jackson is 25 years old, right? He is about to turn 26 in 2 weeks, right? He has played, 5 seasons already? You know who he is. He's been an MVP. He has had crazy rushing numbers. Now, the last 2 years, his passing touchdown numbers have been bad. But name me who is any of the wide receivers that Lamar has had to throw to.
Right.
If you believe in him, he's done. You don't let these guys get to free agency.
Well, Hollywood Brown was a guy that you invested in, and then you're flipping him to
Arizona. Yeah.
Think about the logistics of that.
The best they looked was when they had the 3 tight ends and they let Hurst go and everybody. And so really all he has is Mark Andrews to go. And so I don't know. They could look at this and see with a loaded AFC, with Josh Allen and with Patrick Mahomes, that they want a different look for this team. So they're going to maximize his value and get a whole bunch of picks to try to reload really quickly. Otherwise, there's really no excuse to not have him under contract. I just don't understand it. You find a quarterback, they're so hard to find. You don't ever let them leave the building. No prime quarterback has ever made it to free agency. When Peyton did, it was because his neck was completely in shambles.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, D. Levine here, I think that you can say that they can't use it, but then why have they not re-signed him? And I think that that's 100%.
They've used him like a running back, and they're a team that disposes of running backs very quickly.
If they, to Carr's point, if they were 100% sold on Lamar Jackson, the deal's done.
Yeah.
You're not letting them go into this year. They're not going to get into a Kirk Cousins type situation with him where it's franchise tag, 1 year, massive 1 year deal after massive 1 year deal. I don't think that they're going to get into that game with him. And I think, listen, if they make him available, they tag him and make him available, you're going to see teams like Houston, Atlanta, Carolina, all these teams, Vegas. You're going to see them lining up to pay this guy essentially whatever he wants. Finances are a huge part of it too. We have to be honest. He sees the Deshaun Watson deal that Cleveland fucked up for everybody just because, by guaranteeing the whole thing. And he looks at the numbers and says, statistically, I'm better than this guy. I've been an MVP. I have better numbers than him. I want my deal fully guaranteed.
Absolutely.
That's where play style comes into it, is they're saying with your play style that we have no interest in guaranteeing your entire deal. So play style is 100% a factor.
And again, if that move happens, that's the best thing to happen for the Bears, because when he goes, that is a domino that is off the board. And I think they would be more in line to go get a CJ Stroud at that point, because he's a little bit more of a bigger guy. But then all of a sudden, guess what? The value for the number 2 pick has just gone up again.
Yep.
And so all it is, if we all are as right as we feel we are on Justin Fields, we are in the best place that we can be. And the higher up we go, if we do this right, you could see us competing for a wild card next season. And
I don't think you can discount that. Like I said, just counting on internal growth, and I'm not even talking about free agency or the draft yet. Couple of different plays here or there. You have a couple of more wins this year. You just competed with Philadelphia. You just competed with Buffalo. I know the Buffalo score looked out of hand, and that last touchdown that they threw, if I'm Matt Eberflus, I'm writing that down on a Post-it and folding it over and keeping that for another day, because that was fucked up. I thought. And I know there's no sunshines and rainbows in the NFL, but I've seen plenty of teams just down the football and let it go. They passed to get into the end zone. But it's gonna be interesting, man. This NFL offseason in general, it's not a great free agent class overall. No. I think that there's a lot of very interesting players that can make an impact. But this entire offseason with free agency, with the trade market, without the quarterback situation, the trade market with wide receivers, and then the way that the NFL draft, I think this has the potential to be one of the most fascinating off seasons of the
since last year, really.
Yeah.
When you look at it, right?
With
Wilson and Rodgers, but that is the way the NFL is going. these contracts and the way that the cap is starting to balloon, you're going to see some really good, some movement. It will never be the NBA, right?
No.
But aside from a few names, like one of the things that's going to be fascinating watching is there's a really good chance that Russell Wilson is cut this offseason post
Already.
June 1st just to lower the cap hits.
Yeah,
and so,
that is the Khalil Mack move. You're taking your medicine all in one off season rather than spreading it out. And Ben Albright, I would say it to his face on here. I'd say it to him on Twitter, but I'm sure that he would block me. There's nobody with a sane fucking mind that can justify, and he's a fantastic player, justify taking Patrick Surtain, a cornerback, over Justin Fields. The way that roster was constructed, him falling into their lap, you giving up $265 million to Russell Wilson, all those premium picks. And let's not forget they gave up players on top of those picks. There was 2 or 3 players that went the other way also. Yeah, see, Steph's listening.
No, you're right. And it's hard business doing what they do, but at some point you just have to rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, man. And that is why I know people were upset. Khalil Mack played well the other night, but he had went quite a while with, I haven't broke down his game. Yep.
6 games between sacks and even QB hits. And listen, he is a fantastic player in flashes and spurts still, but the injuries have kind of taken a little bit of a toll.
100%. I mean, he's a guy that can still make an impact without getting to the quarterback. I mean, we've seen that, but from what people in the front office with the Chargers have said, they never looked at him as a 12.5 to 18.5 sack guy coming in there this year.
Nope.
They looked at him as a guy that, if we can max him out around 10 sacks, we're giving up a 2. That's going to be fantastic. That's going to be another guy across from Bosa that's going to take some attention. And what is he at right now? 8.5?
I mean, so 3 of those coming the first week.
Yep.
So in the remaining 14 games, he has had 5 sacks and has had. And if you watch the tape, you will see that first game, he was lights out. He was everywhere. But as the season went on, little things started to add up to him. And when you start getting dinged as a defensive lineman over and over and over again, those things add up. That's why the Bosas are not going to be long for this world, because of the way that the injuries take their toll.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's when you're talking about a top flight defender like Anderson, is that a luxury? That plays into this, Cars. 100%.
Oh, it does.
And I mean, he's very young. He's 21 years old. I get it. Hasn't been injured, hasn't been nicked up, but that plays into it. That position, man, you are getting the shit pounded out of you each and every down, which it's football. I get it. But that is another thing that they're looking at. Is his impact in year 1, year 2 going to be the same that it is in year 6, year 7, year 8 when he's getting that second contract? And if you don't think that they're thinking about that, it's not first and foremost in the front of their thoughts, but it's something that they are talking about at some point moving forward. And is it a luxury? And I think it's a legit question.
And I think this is a great name.
Yeah.
Chase Young is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But it was not, it was, it just wasn't a great place for them to make that pick. As good as he's been, as dominant as he can be, they passed on Justin Herbert to draft him. And I think if they had to redo this draft right now, they would draft Justin Herbert. You have to. If you don't have a QB, you don't win.
They're a team that I always include in the Justin Fields because they were in a lot. They were in striking distance, just like Chicago was to come up.
I mean, it's still fascinating to me, and I know it is to you too. Like when you looked at, it wasn't just that the Broncos drafted a corner, but like the Carolina Panthers drafted a corner. So they went back to back for corners when they both had massive QB needs.
It's Quinnen Williams, Chubbs.
Yeah. Quinnen Williams has been great. Yeah. But so the value though becomes what has New York won with Quinnen Williams?
Right.
Like that's what Shane and I always argue about when it comes to like the drafting of a cornerback so high. Yeah. Sauce Gardner's been phenomenal. I can't sit down and say that. But that guy, since Quinnen Williams has been on the team, this is their best season, I think, is 7-9. This season, they may be 7-10 because you don't have the quarterback. You cannot, you draft defensive guys in the top 10. And unless they are a premium edge rusher, at least they are, or unless they're, something otherworldly, it's not a great value. It's just not. You can't. Gone are the days where you could just go load up your defense and go, because the rules are set so much right now that you have to score points. You have to have a premium quarterback to win in this league. And so drafting Quinnen, as great as he's been, hasn't translated to a lot of wins. Denzel Ward, fantastic corner, 4th overall. They've made the playoffs one time, right? You don't hate the player, but when we talk about value, you have to do value.
Yeah, it's why you don't draft an off-the-ball linebacker in the top 10 in today's football game.
No, you cannot.
And then turn around and pay him $20+ million every single year. I mean, the team that he is on right now, Cars, and I think I've said this every week of this show since he's been traded. I'm not expecting Baltimore to even pay him.
No.
They'll take that 3rd round comp pick. They gave up a 2. They'll take a 3 and let him walk.
I think and this is another great example. Myles Garrett has been lights out, as good as it's come.
Yeah.
Like, he's been worth, all the hype. You don't win based on defense. You need an opportunistic defense, which I think we can clearly say that we have with our young corners and our young safety and the way they force turnovers. But if you don't have an elite offense, the team I will continually point to, the Tennessee Titans, they've had some incredible defenses, and the one time that they were really looking like they could do it was Tannehill was healthy, throwing to A.J. Brown, and they were scoring, dropping points all over the place. Defense, there's no more of the Tony Dungy, defense carrying teams out. LA Rams had a great defense, but if that offense wasn't doing anything, the defense doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. You don't need a shutdown defense. You need a turnover, playmaking defense to make things happen. And really what you have to focus on is you need to be, as an offense, capable of dropping 30+ points 17 weeks out of the season.
I agree. And yeah, Tampa Bay just won the Super Bowl with the defense. Are we just going to pretend that Tom Brady wasn't there and Gronk wasn't there and Mike Evans wasn't there?
Antonio Brown
wasn't Godwin.
And they had a
Leonard
top
Fournette.
5 offensive line.
Yeah, they drafted an offensive lineman. Yeah, and where did they draft him? Like 11th or 10th or something like that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it doesn't. I would say that Tom Brady factored into that pretty big, and that's another thing with Baltimore. They have to pay if they're going to pay Lamar, they're going to pay Lamar, and are they going to follow that up with paying an off-the-ball linebacker $20+ million? We'll see. I just don't see it happening.
I mean, it would be shocking. And yes, the Buccaneers had a great defense, but they also scored the 5th most offensive touchdowns of any team in the NFL.
Yeah. I mean, when Peyton's first year in Denver, you saw that in the defense, but then they ended up getting smacked in the Super Bowl. I mean, that you could point to that and say, when they won the Super Bowl, when they went back and got that, they could say that defense did, but still they still had players there. This isn't just the way that the NFL is constructed now. It's not just we're going to go out there and win it with defense, and that's going to get us to where we want to be. I mean, if you're here, your favorite team is the Chicago Bears. That they went out and made the trade for Jay Cutler and said, offense is fixed. We got the quarterback. Now we're gonna dump more resources into the defense, and it doesn't work that way anymore. It really does not.
No, and like you could talk about Super Bowls, you still have to win the games to get there. So like you're missing and showing a game as like the end all be all. The teams that get there have the best offenses. Yes, their defenses are very good, but it is.
Yeah. But yeah, they allowed 6 points to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Chubbs, go look up that offensive line that got ravaged the 2 games before the Super Bowl and tell me who they went out there. And Ryan Poles spoke on that specifically, that they left the Super Bowl that night and had a team meeting and said, this is never going to happen again. We're going to revamp that offensive line. And that's exactly what they did that season. So it's not just, if you think that defense, you're going to win everything because of defense. I'm not in that vein. No, I'm not. It's obviously not a huge part of it. Got to have a quarterback, got to score points, and you have to have the ability to stop the run and rush the passer along with it. It's all part of it.
That's just the way the NFL is. The rules make it so that you need to have an offense. There's so many penalties out there now for pass interference and holding and all of these different things. You need a defense that can sit down and make plays and make turnovers. But that's just not, when you look at what the Rams have done, what you look at what the Buccaneers did, they were a top 5 offense. The Chiefs were a top 5 offense. The Rams were a top 5 offense. Like, yes, you need to have all of those things, but the difference between the Rams winning a Super Bowl and losing a Super Bowl was Matt Stafford or Jared Goff.
Yeah. And I mean, but like I said, Chubbs, and we're not trying to gang up on you, but
well, we sort of are, because you just won't shut up about it. But that's fine.
You're talking about, again, I mean, you want to talk about the Patriots? Was there anybody else there that was important in New England that was winning Super Bowls other than the defense? Was there anybody else there that was kind of? I mean, you just talked about Tampa. We just named the most important piece there when they won it. He was also in New England. So was the tight end. That was a pretty big part of what they did. So you can't gloss over. You can't gloss over that part of it. Yes, defense 100% matters. You go out there and let's just say the Bears had the 1st and 2nd pick in the draft this year and no trade downs, and they drafted Will Anderson and Jalen Carter. What's their record next year, Cars?
It's still going to be about a 5-11 team. I mean, that's really what it's going to be.
Yeah, you have to try to get balanced on both sides of the ball, but that the Bears have been so wildly imbalanced for years. You've heard Olin talk about it. They went out and they trade for Jay, make that move, then they go get Frank Omiel. They thought that they could get some more play out of who was the left tackle that they signed from the Rams. That was Orlando Pace. But, Olin went to the front office and said, guys, our offensive line sucks. I don't know how to tell you. They give him Frank Omiel, and then they go give $92 million to Julius Peppers because Gaines Adams died. It's a philosophy, and it's going to change this year. I think you're going to see the Bears dump a shit ton of money into the defense, but I don't think that that's going to be the sole focus at all. And that's usually what it's been in Chicago.
You have to have an offense. Like, it's the bare minimum. You have to be a threat to drop 30 plus points a game every game of the season. And if you're not that, you're not winning in the NFL.
You know who a great example of that is everybody talks about how hot Nick Foles got for the Eagles Super Bowl run. And I'll tell you what, go watch that defense in the playoffs. They were relentless. The pass rush, the secondary, everything. That was a part of it. To Chubb's point, you have to have that part of it. But if you don't have the ability to go up top and make plays, if you get punched in the face against a team or you have a turnover, it's none of it. None of it matters.
No, because again, the way the game is set up, if you need to be a threat to be able to score from anywhere on the field, you need to be multiple layers of your offense. If you cannot do that, you're not going to get there. The Super Bowl.
That's why they drafted Treston Ebner, Cars.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's why they went out and drafted. Anyway, I'm going to leave that be. Yeah, it's just, it's a different way to look at it. But if the defense, the most important thing that when you look at those two teams, if you want to talk about Tampa and the Eagles, they just had really deep defensive lines. The Seattle Seahawks had the same thing where they could rotate in pass rushers. And really, those pass rushers made the corners look better than they were.
That's what makes Philadelphia so dangerous this year. Is they're not 3 or 4 deep on the defensive line. They're like 8 deep.
Now, what makes them not dangerous is the way they deploy the quarterback and the offensive scheme. And I think it's a little different there.
Yeah,
but their offensive line is crazy as well.
Yeah, the Eagles' backup offensive line could be offensive line 1 for teams in the NFL. That's how good they are. And
for probably any team outside of the top 10 in defense, that's probably accurate. Yeah. So we'll answer one question that I think that just kept showing up. So my take on this is twofold, and then Shane, I'll let you see.
Kevin Warren.
Yes, Kevin Warren. It is 2 things that I really look at, and it's one, this tells me that they don't want a guy that's impeding in football process whatsoever from a team perspective. What they want is a guy who's going to manage the financials, manage the stadium, potentially probably manage some sort of TV network deal for more things like they've done with the Big Ten Network, and really being a business level person. So this seems to be more of an extension of, we're going to let Poles and them do everything. You're going to run and handle everything that happened. Second, I think it's an interesting name because he understands the value of it. But really, to me, I don't care so much because I don't think he's seeing what he's done and where he's been. He's not going to be involved in the day-to-day stuff. He's not going to be in anything like that. So I feel like that is, to me, the name doesn't matter as long as the person is remaining hands-off. Shane, what would you feel?
Yeah, I mean, if I can't sit here. I had my DMs flooded asking me what I thought of Kevin Warren, and if I were to tell you anything about him other than what I can read on Wikipedia, I would be lying. I mean, I think it's interesting that his first client as an agent was TTNL's own Christopher Zorich. So we have some stuff out to Chris. We'll get some background on him there, but I don't know. I think that a big part of it is his, stadium prowess and getting those things wrapped up because he was directly involved in Minnesota with that, correct?
Yeah, he was the big in the development of the stadium, the practice facilities, a couple other things as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand. Like I saw bullets put in there that it's not a football guy, and I understand it. But then you have to look at it a different way also. And I know that you can say this is what they were doing with Ted, but this is them doubling down on their belief in Ryan Poles.
Yeah.
And Ryan Poles' football acumen. And you bring in. Do you want to bring in a football czar, football president that is not on the same page with the GM that you just hired, with the head coach, doesn't like the play style of Justin Fields and wants to have a completely clean slate? Because that is part of it also. I mean, you're not having these interviews and these discussions with these guys, just like with Ryan Poles and with Matt Eberflus, without bringing up the quarterback situation.
Oh,
it's 100% part of it in every talk. So I can't sit here and say that I know anything about him. I a football, CEO / president of the Chicago Bears. Yeah, it's obvious that they want a guy with a different background in the football ops. That is more so what I wish that the Bears would do.
Yes.
I wish that they would have president and CEO of the football operations and a president and CEO of everything else, and they're two separate entities that can work together, but that's not their blueprint. Is it flawed? Sure, it can be flawed. The system that they have now is flawed, but I honestly, Cars,
as long as Poles keeps aligned to McCaskey and not to this new person, I don't think it really matters.
And what it's going to come down to, no matter who is in there, and you can say that, Ted Phillips and all of this, the Bears haven't drafted well enough. That's really what it comes down to. Yeah, it's what it comes down to. They have not drafted well enough. They have not developed well enough. And you have to draft better. I think that there's been plenty of players here that have the talent, and different things have happened. They've drafted guys with talent that should have never been drafted because of their medical history. They drafted Curtis Enis, who was actually playing quite well, and he shredded his knee against the Rams. Mark Colombo was starting to play better, and he shredded his leg. Tommy Harris, the same type of deal when he tore his hamstring from the bone. But the Bears have to draft better. And, they've never had the quarterback. And I think that is the ultimate wild card. That's the ultimate ace up the sleeve. They've never had the quarterback.
And even when they did, they didn't really invest or believe in him. And so that all has to change, because I think we've seen enough looking at what he can do. And I know everybody likes to kind of hold some of the numbers against him, but if they believe in him like we say that they do, you're going to see kind of like what the Kansas City Chiefs did, 2 years ago, and rebuild the line on the fly.
Yeah.
You're going to see that happen. It would not shock me if we see more activity in free agency for the defense and draft capital built around an offensive young player and adding guys that way. That's the way I think that they're going to look at this, because they want to build this for longevity more than anything else.
Yeah, and where's the one question? Yeah, Stulacker, I don't think that is in the cards whatsoever, and I don't think that Ryan Poles wants that. I think he is fully invested as the general manager of creating this football team.
He'd get power, but he'd also give up a lot of power.
You would give up all of your power to Ian Cunningham in shaping the. Yes. Yeah, you could overrule him on some financial decisions, which, listen, you can say whatever you want about Ted Phillips. There's factual evidence back in the day that he did it. But if you want to tell me that the Bears are cheap and the Bears don't spend money, every time you say that, I can show you the Julius Peppers contract. I can show you the Bears, paying Brian Urlacher. I can show you
what they've done to rebuild Hallis has been a
all of that.
tremendous
Yep.
expense.
They've spent a shitload of money. They just haven't spent it on the right players. Brandon Maliuna, Chester Taylor, all of, things, moves like that. That's spending a lot of money, just not the right way.
Yep.
Again,
To Jay. All that money to Jay and never building around him, right?
Yeah.
Like all of it.
Yeah, your first move after you traded for Jay Cutler was going out and signing a washed Orlando Pace. And then what was your next move in the draft for him? Drafting Johnny Knox in round 5.
Yep. So you had to draft some unknown defensive backs in earlier rounds, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's just ugly, and it
hurts too because you gave up. You trade for Jay in what was it? That was 2009, I believe, right? You got him, so it was April 2nd because I remember everybody thought it was an April Fool's joke. But then you go out there, and in 2010 you have no first rounder because of the Cutler trade because you gave up 2 1s. And then what did you do? You took your second rounder from the 2010 draft and you traded it to Tampa Bay for a player that wasn't working out in Gaines Adams down in Tampa Bay. You have him for 4 or 5 games. They find him dead in his bed from natural causes. He died. And then what happens then? Then you're going into an offseason with no first-round draft pick, no second-round draft pick. You go out and you give Julius Peppers $92 million. Everybody agreed with the move at the time. You had to make it. But I want to say their 3rd-round pick was their first pick that year. Was that the year they took Major Wright? They still went, it was still
absolutely
defense.
Correct. That is exactly the way it
The
happened.
next year they had the same type of deal, Cars, or maybe it was remember Jerron Gilbert was their first pick at 1 year in the 3rd round, the pool jumper. And it's just, those are the things that kill your franchise.
Jerron Gilbert was the year before.
Yeah, so that makes sense why they had so that was the 3rd rounder, Jerron Gilbert.
The Bears did draft a wide receiver in the 3rd round.
Joaquin Iglesias
that everybody saw in 5 practices and were like, this guy is straight garbage.
I saw Joaquin Iglesias. It was I was at Jay Cutler's first game in a Bears uniform. It was a preseason game in Buffalo. That was you guys have all heard the Larry Mayer story with me from that game. Jay went out in his first series and just threw off his back foot, run into the sideline, threw it up to Devin Hester, got picked. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, shit, didn't want to see that. But Joaquin Iglesias actually had a touchdown that game. He never played a snap for the Bears, ever. He played 1 special team snap for the Minnesota Vikings, I believe it was.
Yep.
But just never played. 3rd rounder. Dan Bazine, 2nd rounder, never played an NFL snap. Jerron Gilbert, 5 NFL games. 3rd rounder. Michael Okwell, 3rd rounder, never played an NFL snap. Brandon Harden played in the preseason. 3rd rounder, just gone. This is why you are where you are. It doesn't have to do with Ted Phillips. It's drafting. Yes, he's part of bringing these guys in, but still, you're drafting nothing.
I think you're being too kind to nothing. I think it is less than nothing. Because, I mean, again, one of my favorite websites when I get way too happy with life is I go to drafthistory.com and look at all the Bears draft picks and then cry a little bit.
You look at it, Cars, and honestly, and this has been, and I know I talked to Greg Gabriel. We'll go back and forth in some DMs and stuff. And I know he gets fired up about it. And they had early success drafting in Chicago when they first got here. But it really seemed to me after their Super Bowl appearance, when they lost to the Colts, it really seemed like there was a shift. They came out in the 1st round that year. Nobody was complaining about Greg Olsen. But after that pick, Cars, you look, just read the
Wolf, Okwo, Beekman, Kevin Payne, Corey Graham, Tremaine McBride. The next year, Chris Williams, Matt Forte, Earl Bennett, Marcus Harrison, Craig Stelz. I mean, to your point,
Tremaine McBride's crowning moment as an NFL player was never on the field.
Yeah.
You know what it was?
No.
He banged Lisa Lampanelli, the comedian,
That's right.
after
Now
a
I
show one
remember.
night. I won't get into that story, but that did happen, by the way.
When you look at what they did, if you want to see a veritable wasteland,
Yeah.
you go from 2007 up until, well, really, oh God, there's a lot of years in there. Just go to 2007 to now and look at all those first round picks. You know, we did talk about last week, right? When you talked about, you know, how many guys are on this team. And I think we showed this, you know, like you have no money spent whatsoever on this franchise. When you looked at, is this the one? No. When you look at like where we've drafted guys and who has been here, we have a total of 19 guys that are first round picks on, or at Bears, 22 people, that are Bears draft picks that are on this roster. 9 of them came from the last season.
I gotta answer Chubbs. Chubbs, that was my point. That was his crowning achievement. And yes, she is ugly as hell. There is a backstory to it but I can't get into it here publicly. DM me and I can share it with you sometime. But yeah, when that is your crowning achievement. That's what I'm saying. That's a fucking issue.
But when you have 22 draft picks and 9 of them are there from the last season, the whole reason you suck is because of that. Mm-hmm. And so you need, again, this is why we keep going back. When you look at the Bears had 4 first rounders, 4 former first rounders on their roster when we played the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep.
The Philadelphia Eagles have 5 guys who were first round picks on their defensive line alone.
Yep.
So when we sit down and talk about value, that's what this means. This is why you have to make the trade. You win in the trenches, but Will Anderson, Jalen Carter are not going to be enough. So you need to multiply. I am more okay getting a Will Anderson and staying put and drafting those guys if you get a Deron Payne, an Orlando Brown. We talked about Elton Jenkins. He's off the list now. Ethan Pochik. You talk about a lot of those guys. And Alex, that is not true because Mustafa was an UDFA. So he doesn't even count in that list. If you go out and do a home run of home runs in free agency, then absolutely you stay there. But you have to make it a home run. And so what we saw this offseason is we've got to rip it down to get the studs. We've got to get bad. We've got to get our contracts under control because Ryan Pace handed out money to guys who are undeserving constantly because he couldn't draft well anyway. And so now this is what you had to do. In the NFL, you have to suck to get good. It's just the way, or you have to aggressively trade and move. And until they do it, you can't. Until they're there, it just doesn't work.
Mediocrity, just much like in the NBA, it's the worst possible place to be. Is being mediocre.
And you look at the teams right now that have had good years. This is not unlike the Lovie Smith era Bears. You're talking the Jets, the Giants, the Redskins. For a couple years, it's been the Colts. It's been all these other teams that have been just good enough to eke it into the playoffs, the Tennessee Titans, and not make an impact in the playoffs whatsoever. The reason the Cincinnati Bengals, who did not have a great overall team, made it to the Super Bowl was because of the way that Joe Burrow played, throwing to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. That offensive line was bottom 3rd. He got hit more than anybody. But you know what? They could score 30 points at any point. They can score anywhere all the time.
Yeah, they might score 40 or 50 too.
Yeah. And so if you sit there mediocrity, if you want to look at the standings right now, Green Bay is set for mediocrity. Detroit, I think, has a better chance of being the division winner next year. But until they get rid of Goff, they're set for mediocrity. You look across the league. If you look at the reason that San Francisco is looking so good is because, in part, the Rams are so bad, the Cardinals are so bad, the Seahawks are so bad. There's a reason that, the AFC South or the NFC South is going to have a team with a losing record in the playoffs. Because Tampa Bay has no business being there, but they are the tallest midget in that group. But guess what? After this season, that team's done. New Orleans is done. You have to get bad, and if you sit there in mediocrity, unless you nail the picks. We talked about Tampa. They had a bad year. They moved up like 10-ish. They drafted an all-world left tackle while they added Brady. Made all the difference. When you get to the top 10, you have to make your picks hit. We've never done that. And so now you've got, this is why we're here.
Yeah, I can't go against what you're saying, but listen, the ultimate separator in all of this, and you can talk about the Jets, you can talk about Cleveland, you can talk about Detroit until you're blue in the face. The rebuild here is easier.
Yeah.
Because of quarterback.
Yeah.
Always
absolutely
easier. The Bears had never had that. That's why they were always spinning their wheels. It was Jay this. Oh, Jay's he's gonna figure it out. He's gonna figure it out.
12, he's gonna get this.
It's the whole Mitch Trubisky thing all over again. It's everything that's happened against poor Mitch. Mitch is never held accountable to. He's leaving the Bears. He's going right to San Francisco. And he's going to win Bill Belichick's not going to pass him up. He's going there to replace Brady. He's going to win Super Bowls. Neither one of them went after him. He went to Buffalo for a year for $2.5 million because nobody else wanted to sign him as a starter. Now he's in Pittsburgh, and guess where he's going to be next year? He's going to be playing for another team. He's going to be on year 4, team number 4 in year 7, and there's still going to be Bears fans out there making excuses for him every step of the way. Pittsburgh signed him, and people like Mike North were all over Twitter. Amazing organization. They get it. They're pulling this kid off the scrap heap. And what the fuck was their first move 6 weeks later? Oh, yeah, drafting Kenny Pickett. So that showed you exactly what they thought of Mitch. Mitch in Pittsburgh was Mike Glennon here. You signed him in free agency, and then you publicly took a shit all over his forehead in the draft. That's what you think of him. We don't have that here. It's what's going to keep us from being mediocre. If we do this draft right, because you're right at quarterback. Yeah, this is a launch. This is absolutely a launch. Yeah, you want to look at 100%. I'll let you get back to your point, but real quick, I think this is key, Cars. Justin Fields. You listen to other NFL players talk about this kid. And this is a big part of, I think you can put Lamar Jackson in this group. I think you can put Deshaun Watson in this group. I think that there's going to be players that are saying, I want Chicago, not because it's a big market, not because they have $125 million in cap space, not because they have a top pick. I think there's going to be players that pick Chicago just because of this kid. That is how he's moving the meter in a league where players are everything. Yes, you have to have the coaching. He's going to get players here just because of the belief in him throughout the league and the players. Josh Allen talking about him. You hear player after player after player talking about this kid. It's uncharted territory for Bears fans, anybody in this situation, because we've never had it. All because of one guy. And thankfully, our previous regime that's no longer here had the mental fortitude, and, it just truly shows you how stupid Matt Nagy was, because his blueprint was to bench him and not play him at all. That was the plan. It's just, to me, that's the ultimate separator when you're talking about this rebuild.
And just to piggyback onto this, the player I want to talk through the most is Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Deshaun came in, the Houston Texans traded up to get him. They gave up a lot of picks. They went 4-12 that year. They went and win back-to-back 10-plus game seasons, but they have sacrificed so many picks and drafted so poorly that they went right back into the gutter. They gave Bill O'Brien way too much power. He decides he's going to trade a stud wide receiver for a running back. They draft Titus Howard, Russ Blacklock, like a lot of different people, but they failed in the draft. Compare that to where Mahomes went. He sat. They've drafted way better. Now, maybe not so much in some of the skill positions, but in the trench positions and other places, and they've built around the quarterback. What would you say Kansas City is? An offense that can score points and an opportunistic defense. When you look at Philly, they're a good defense, but it's all up front. Those corners are trash. We saw that the last week. They got exposed pretty poorly, but they've got a good defensive line. That's the blueprint. Good. You draft well, you offensive line, defensive line, add those players in, and then you have a chance. Do not make this to be like the Deshaun Watson Houston Texans. Make this be like the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, Jason, this isn't the short show this week. We forgot to tell you, since there was no other TTNL content. We got
2 more hours left. I hope you're ready.
We haven't even gotten to shout outs yet.
Oh, shout outs is going to be about an hour 45. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, no, it is. It's going to be, I am so excited about this offseason, what we're going to be doing here at TTNL and with, the patron side and breaking all of these free agents down and the cars. This, you have the most epic reaction in TTNL history with the Bears are trading up, and we have the propensity for that level of excitement going into draft night. I mean, if I'm Ryan Poles, you're obviously taking every single phone call. I'm holding them. If they're number one, I'm holding that fucking pick till we're on the goddamn clock. I mean, to the last fucking minute. The
closer it gets, though, the offers are going to build.
Oh, hell yes.
So a week before the draft, I think is when that pick would get moved, because you're going to know.
No, I agree. Yeah. But it's just, oh man, you have, listen, you can have all the picks in the world. You're giving yourself more chances to screw up, really. When you think about it, you're also giving yourself more chances to fix it. But seriously, the more and more I think about it, Cars, and I understand you want to come away with blue chip, man, I almost think that the best course of action is the way that this team is constituted. If you're looking at a player that you're like, all right, this guy is going to take us from 3 wins to 8, push us onto the brink of 500, whatever like that. And that is a pass rusher going to do that? Is a 3-tech going to do that? No. You're talking quarterback.
You get both of those.
Yeah.
Well, sort of. If you get a 3 technique and an edge rusher combined, both. Yes.
And this is the thing, Cars, and I think that's true. So let's not even look at the massive trade down. I know we're pushing 2 hours here, but this is another. I think this is very important. Don't look at the massive trade down. So let's just say the Bears are at number 1 or number 2, and number 4 comes calling. Or, you know what I mean?
Yep.
You're still going to get premium picks. Like I told you, you go from number 2 to number 1. It's got to be
a second rounder.
Yeah,
basically,
no matter
the
what.
way the value is. The earliest second round picks are about 500. You're getting an early second rounder.
You can get to 4 or 5 and make a super strong case that Carter is still available.
Oh yeah, I think he's a guy that's going to fall on draft day.
Do you?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's a great player.
The motor question
will do it. So I think there isn't a lot of value in the league still to this day for that position, because it is it is in certain defenses, but it is not an all around position. So yeah, I think he's a guy that falls. Yeah.
But either way, what I'm saying is we know that in this defense that it's the position that drives the defense in this style of defense. If you can come away and getting premium picks and still have the ability to draft Jalen Carter, no matter where, I'm just using a name, whomever it is. That's yeah, right. Exactly. That is an ultimate win.
And that, I bet you, because it's a quarterback, you can probably get them to throw in Buckner on an expiring deal as part of that, because they're going to have to hit the reset
I think if
button.
they're trading with the Colts, I think 100% Eberflus is going to be pounding the table for a guy like that. 100%.
And when you start to, the one question we didn't cover, and we might as well right now, it would not shock me if let's just say it ended today, and the way that this went, that the Texans are at 1 and the Bears are at 2. It would not shock me if both teams traded out, because the needs in those rosters are so full.
Yep.
And the way this draft runs, like once you get past, once you get past, probably for me, like Tyree Wilson at defensive end, doesn't really matter a whole bunch. Once you get past maybe Torrance from Florida, the offensive line isn't a whole lot. The question that someone asked is like, what's the strongest position? Maybe defensive back as of right now is the strongest position. And that's not saying much, because I don't really you get past Joey Porter Jr., Kylie Ringo.
I'm glad that we don't have to draft a DB up top, is all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a strong draft. I wouldn't say there's any position whatsoever. But when you kind of look at this, I think the guy I said earlier last week, you fall back enough, the kid from Baylor, Siaka, I know he's not a 3 technique, but the way that he would absorb, he'd be a Jordan Davis type, right? To absorb blockers and do that. And that makes other people around him.
Well, then that makes you going out, and if Deron Payne isn't out there, then if you're in the Draymond Jones, sweepstakes, that's what makes that in the free agency. That's what makes it, and I think he's a fantastic player. I wouldn't break the bank for Hargrave in free agency myself. I know there's people that would. Would it shock me if that was a guy that the Bears were involved with? It wouldn't shock me. He wouldn't be part of my blueprint to, like, if Deron Payne hits free agency. I don't understand, if you're Washington, how you just let him walk for nothing. But I mean, if Deron Payne hits free agency, cars, you're paying him $14.5 to $15 million.
Here's your checkbook. You just tell us the number, and we'll sign
25 years old. You're giving him $14.5 to $15 million per. And honestly, that's not. Then you add Anderson to that, or you add Carter to that in any scenario, then you have the makings of having a chance, on your defensive line. And it's options. Chubb's talked about needing just one more team. It's not in the top 5. You painted the scenario perfectly with Carolina is the team that's sitting back there with an enormous need at quarterback, and they also have the ammunition to go up.
They're the best case scenario right now, unless Atlanta, for whatever reason, is going, we'll give you a bunch and we don't really know what to do with Pitts, so you take him too. There's the best matchup is Carolina. And we'll talk about the draft, but we really need to do a free agency breakdown.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because free agency is going to basically really determine what happens. And so defensive line in free agency is pretty good.
Well, Carter, you paint your free agency scenario just on defense that could really blow the defense wide open in the, the defensive pick or any pick in the draft. You were talking about, you included a linebacker, you included a couple defensive linemen, and this is where having the $125 million helps you infinitely.
We live in a world where it is not completely unbelievable that the Bears could walk out with Draymond Jones, Deron Payne, and Tremaine Edmonds in free agency. And when you take a step back and you look at that, that gives you your 3 tech, that gives you your defensive end. Understand he's not quite at the level of the guys, but he's a 3-down player and he's very good. You add Edmonds back there, who is a weak side linebacker that has all the traits and measurables. You pair him with Sanborn. Now all of a sudden you're looking at this defense going, all right, we are in a kind of a position where we can be really creative. And defense is really fascinating because, outside of some of the other names, there's Yannick is out there. I don't think we'll be in I don't think Jesse Bates, he's a great player. I don't think he's going to be someone. We saw there's a lot of corners out there and safeties out there. Ogunjobi is a name that may come back in as a free agent. Hasn't had a great year. But Edmonds,
he's been Ryan Poles has been proven correct on the physical, and when they pulled it from him, they talked to the Pittsburgh beat writer, and he said he's made impact in small windows, but there's been multiple weeks where he has not practiced once because he's not healthy enough, just so they can put duct tape on him to get him into the game.
Yeah.
And that's I don't think he's even gonna. I don't think he would even consider to come back here with this regime, and I don't think that this regime would consider that. Yeah, I don't think they would.
And I mean, so there's you could take a James Bradbury corners out there. I'm not a super big guy, but
he's getting overrated cars because of what's in front of him.
Oh yeah, but I mean, if you walk out of that and I tell you that we get Deron Payne, Draymond Jones, Tremaine Edmonds, that's a home run.
Yep.
That's an absolute miss, and there's still money after the fact. Yeah.
Yeah, and he is available. He was actually, I have it, Cars. I had showed it with you. I went back when we were with the previous network, our top 32s there, and I mean, you saw where I had him and Roquan, where I had Roquan one slot ahead of Tremaine Edmonds. But when you're signing him too, it's extremely rare for you to have the ability to sign a guy in pro free agency that's 24 years old. He was a guy that had just turned, he was 19, I believe, in the draft, and then turned 20 like right after it. So he is young. And when you talk about Roquan Smith and his measurables, and it never fit into what Eberflus had in mind at that position, in terms of, and you heard him talk about it after they traded him, ball production. That is what it's all about at the will linebacker position in this defense.
And the only reason he's available is the Buffalo Bills went out and spent like crazy because they thought that this was their year. And the Bills are currently $3.5 million over the cap next year. And that is when massive extensions kick in for Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. Von Miller's dead cap number is $40 million if they try to move off of him. Dawson Knox's deal kicks in next year.
Yep.
So they've got money in a lot of places. Bullets, you're right, and they also will actually have more in cap space because they're going to be able to move on from Carson Wentz's deal and free up some space.
And they have no quarterback. So that, again, when you're talking about Lamar Jackson, any of these guys that are moving, that if you make a move for Lamar Jackson, if you're involved with him, you're going to give him the contract that he wants in free agency or in a trade. And the
only reason I say that he's potentially available is You've got Jonathan Allen with his money. You're going to have Chase Young that you're going to have to pay.
Sweat.
You're going to really choose between Sweat and Payne. And to me, I think they're going to choose
the pass rusher.
The pass rusher and Sweat. Not that Payne isn't one, but that's the premium. But what you're not going to do as a team is really have in a 220 million to 200, whatever it is, you're not going to be paying 75 million to 4 defensive linemen. And if you are, thank you, because that is a really bad franchise.
Yeah, and don't listen. The Bears have a shitload of money available, but part of NFL free agency is these guys going to the best situation that they think is for them. And yes, money is always number one. I don't give a shit what Eric Lambert says, whatever. That's always number one. Some of these guys are going to take the bag, and some of them are going to be like, I want to be closer to home. Maybe Deron Payne wants to go back down south. Maybe he wants to play in a state where there's no income tax. Yeah, who knows? So just because the Bears don't sign somebody that you want, that's what I always laugh is, why the fuck weren't the Bears involved with him? They're going to be involved with everybody. Just because of the money that they have, not everybody is going to want to come to Chicago.
And that's going to be the difference between this year and last, right? Or this upcoming offseason and this past one. The Bears were in a lot of guy, but they didn't have a whole lot of money, and they had to move things around to make this happen. It made it really tricky. And they weren't really wanting to spend big money dollars on 30-plus-year-old guys because it's not where they were. They wanted to err on the side of youth. This year, because they've gone down to studs, some of those guys, ideally you're around 27 years old when they're signing you, but a lot of these guys, 30 or older, are still going to be in play if they're really good.
Yeah, you go out and sign, let's say Payne hits free agency and you sign, let's just say you come away on day one with Deron Payne and Tremaine Edmonds, you just signed a 24-year-old and a 25-year-old in pro free agency. And that's big time talents. That's pretty rare.
And again, the only reason the guy like Edmonds is available is bad cap management. If you look at these teams that are going to have to get creative. I don't know how Green Bay did Elton Jenkins because they're only $2 million under the cap for next year. I think that's gone. The Panthers are $1.8 million under the cap. So I don't know how with that roster.
With no quarterback.
With no quarterback. The Rams, Bills, Dolphins, Vikings, Chargers, Titans, Jaguars, Bucks, and Saints are all over the cap. And when you get past the last 5 names, Chargers, Titans, Jags, which is mind-blowing to me, Tampa and New Orleans, you're talking teams that are all $10+ million over the cap.
Yeah, and you have to look at a team like Philly. They have to pay Jalen Hurts this offseason.
And do you know, we go back to Carolina?
Yeah.
We saved them $16 million by picking up Brian Burns.
Yep.
Just kind of saying.
Yeah. And that gives them the ability to get who they believe is an answer at quarterback.
Yeah.
And they've been the other route. They've been, trading for Sam Darnold. They've been bringing in Baker Mayfield. They brought back Cam. They did all of those moves. They haven't made that move in the draft since Cam Newton. What year was that they drafted him? Was that 11 or something like that? Something like right that. Around there. But yeah, that's going to be, it's a great name to write down in the Carolina Panthers and see how it goes, because it's all about quarterback, man. It's where it all starts. These guys all get overrated. That's why I still to this day cannot believe in any realm that Justin Fields was drafted 11th. I mean, he got past Detroit. He got past Carolina. He got past Denver. New York should have ran to the fucking podium We said that
But they
the
believed
entire
in
offseason.
Danny
Yeah.
Dimes.
Oh my God.
Thank God. And I feel like I'm picking on Chubbs, but I also don't care. So the cap is in a way bullshit. The problem is at some point though, it comes to roost. What you're doing is you're kicking as much money into the future as you can. So yes, you can make someone work for now, but then you're going to be in the Tampa Bay or the Saints area where both of those teams are $40+ million over the cap. And so Green Bay is going to be in a bad situation in 2 years when all the dead money in the void years that they've added to Aaron's deal, to Bakhtiari's deal, it's probably going to cost them Aaron Jones this offseason because his cap number is $20 million from renegotiations and punting things into the future. But you can manipulate to make anything happen year over year. It's how the Rams won the Super Bowl. What happened this year?
Yeah,
it's all come home to roost.
Chubbs, nobody is saying that it's a foregone conclusion, but show me where the Bears have been unwilling recently to spend, where the owner has been involved and said, no, we're not gonna make the trade for Khalil Mack because it's gonna cost us too much money.
And it was money that, remember, the only reason we got him was because the Raiders, when you sign someone, you have to put all the guaranteed money into an escrow account.
Yeah.
The Raiders would not do that, did not have the cash to
That's what a lot of people know. Yeah. If you get the $60 million guaranteed, that's immediately out of your holding.
You instantly, you have to cut a check for $60 million. Even if you paid over 7 years, you are cutting a check for $60 million and you're putting it in an escrow account that person can then get access to. When you're saying like, Bullets, they're over the cap next year. Yeah, they're right there, but they're over the cap next year. They've punted everything thinking that they had a chance to win a second Super Bowl. You punt and you do all of these things when you think you can win a Super Bowl. When you can't win a Super Bowl, or you convince yourself, like the Saints have, like the Packers have for a decade, that you have a chance at winning a Super Bowl and you really don't, all you're doing is ruining the rebuild, right? Like it's just setting you back. You overspend and you manipulate the cap when you are closer to a Super Bowl than where you are now.
Chubbs, Jesus Christ, you make up shit as you go. I mean, they paid out almost all of the fucking guaranteed money already for Khalil Mack.
Yeah.
Cars, you would have the numbers there. But I mean, I asked you who they wouldn't pay for that. So what's the name of the wide receiver that the Bears were willing to pay? And George McCaskey said, no, because I'm not going to give you money. Can't just say the wide receiver room.
Because they didn't get.
Who was the wide receiver that was available? That was the big time wideout that was worth overpaying for. Who was it?
Christian Kirk.
Great. He's got some nice numbers, but I still wouldn't give him that fucking contract.
No, and that's just, and what we had done with Khalil Mack is we had started to punt more money
everything
into the
down
future.
the road. Exactly, yeah.
And so
they reworked his deal, 3 or 4 times. They did it with Cody Whitehair 3 or 4 times. They did it with Eddie. They did it with Eddie Goldman. They did it
every year after his first year here. They renegotiated. I actually think, if I remember correctly, they renegotiated part of his deal at the end of his first year here. Oh, sorry, Bullets. I'm obviously feisty today, so thank the dealership for that.
The filters will do that to you, Cards.
They will totally set you off. But
what was the guaranteed money when they signed Khalil Mack?
$90 million guaranteed.
And then that was in 2018. He got traded in 2022. So what did they pay out? And when they're reworking his deal, he's getting that guaranteed money instantly when they're reworking the deal, because they're bringing that all forward. But then you can punt it down, like you said. But what was paid out to him in guaranteed money?
So through 2021, he had they took 41 million in year one, right? So basically was the amount of cash that went out. So he basically got 41, 56, 66, 73. He got 90 million over the first 4 years.
Yeah. So there you go.
So, and the Bears, when they traded him, because there was still money, they actually took and accelerated the cap hit this year,
right?
To take the rest of the deal, on.
Yeah, Chubbs, I know what you're saying, but you said that they need the money for the stadium. That's why they did it.
No.
The Khalil Mack trade has zero to do with the stadium. It has everything to do with your quarterback clearing the decks financially so you can make any fucking move that you deem necessary to give Justin Fields the best possible team. Khalil Mack was never – this stadium is, 7 years down the road, Cars?
Oh, yeah.
6?
Yeah.
I mean, 5 at the absolute earliest. So, I mean, he's not even going to be playing in the league.
No, 2000, they'll probably break down in 3 years, right? Like that.
Yeah, they'll break ground.
Break ground.
Yeah. But I mean, you're not just and it's not
they've
just
got
stadium,
that money.
yeah.
Because look at the money that they have done when they have redone Hallis Hall, right? And all the practice fields and the parking facilities and the Peyton Center. They have spent the weight room. Remember when we saw the videos of the updated weight room and training centers that they've done? They have cash. This is not a cash poor franchise. This is not Mark Davis and they need to fly on Southwest Airlines to Las Vegas. So yes, they will need to have money, but this is a team that has the money. If they're going to be able to go out and spend the amount of money to buy the Churchill Downs, the Arlington racetrack.
Yeah.
That's coming out of cash. They have that money today. So yes, they have money. They have been pocketing money. They would have more money if they didn't have the Chicago bullshit Soldier Field deal. So I don't really worry about that so much. I don't worry, about anything along those lines. That guaranteed money, they will go out and cut and do and have no problems. But they're not going to worry about that because they know basically they will mortgage the future. They will borrow $100 million to start the building of that stadium, knowing full well that when it's done, that stadium will make
they're
them
going to get
more
a huge
than $100
they're going
million.
to get a huge kickback from the NFL.
And this is the best point. Yes, they are paper billionaires, but they also have a residual cash value, right? They are storing money. If they were not being that, the one thing I will say that has been probably good that Ted Phillips has done is it has kind of put a focus on the business and storing money so that they can do these upgrades, so that when this opportunity became available, they can.
Yeah, and Cars, what is the dead cap number that the Bears are paying out this year for players that aren't even on the roster?
It is $96 million.
They're paying almost $100 million to players that aren't even here to play football for the Bears. That's what they're paying out.
I'm sorry, it's 92.
92.
And the active roster is 82.
Yeah, so they're paying more in players that aren't here than for players that are here.
And again, I know we've talked about this a little bit. The only team, we are the lowest. We are the lowest amount of an active roster. The only other team under 100 million is the Atlanta Falcons.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean that's gonna, like you said, every move that's made this offseason is centered around Justin Fields' financial future. Let's be honest.
It's clearing the books.
Yeah.
For paying him $40+ million a year.
Yeah, it's probably going to be 50 by the time his comes
You're
around.
right.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting, man. But where was the one that I wanted to? Yeah, Leo asked negatives on polls. I mean, I think we kind of talked about it. I wanted to see him, I think we could talk about Tonga. Did they move off of Tonga too early? Things like that. I mean, I don't think it's moving the meter. Yes, he's a nice player. He's had a decent season in Minnesota. I know that gets a little bit overplayed, but the same people that are praising him are the same ones that were saying that Minnesota was going to rue the day when Armon Watts was going to be let walk and Amir Smith-Marset was let walk.
And he's played in 5 games. Kyrus has.
Yeah.
I'd say my biggest complaint is that I think that they thought they could coach up the offensive line more. Well,
yeah, and you look to the Mustafa thing, and I think Leo said that talking about
if Kramer was here, he'd be the guy. But when that failed, they did not make a move.
Right, and then the Patrick injury, you have to factor that in. You can't project.
That was a bad signing overall too.
Oh yeah, 100%. The kid that they wanted, and I haven't went back and looked, but the kid that they wanted, Allen from the Rams, that was the guy that they came out the gates.
And Bates.
Yeah, and then Buffalo. Ryan Bates, and who got hurt, but I guess he came back in the Bears game. But yeah, I mean, the deflected passes, I mean, I'm not sure if that's ever been used as a reason. I mean, he's got 4 deflected passes. That's okay. I don't think that anybody's ever went out and said this dude deflected 4 passes, so we gotta bring him onto this roster. Yeah, it can be a big part, but it's just one of those things. I think that they looked at him in this style defense. They thought that they had somebody better. They went out and they brought in Pennell, who's a little bit older, but I mean, you can't complain about has Kyrus Tonga had a Philadelphia Eagles game like Mike Pennell did this season? I'm not sure he has, but yeah, I mean, you could point to there was some moves in the waiver claim when you were up top that I would have liked to had seen him make. I've talked repeatedly about I wanted him to. And it's more so for this offseason. I want to see him be creative in some of these deals where you're involved. And
I think he's too much sitting back and taking it all in and figuring it out. We had hoped at this point there'd be a lot more roster turnover and guys coming in and out.
Yeah, especially the bottom of the roster. I thought it was going to be one of those things where it was, very consistent week in and week out, where you saw at least one guy brought in and maybe signed I mean, I can go back and bring up the transaction history and post it for our patrons of every move that he has made, and I'm sure it's a lot more than either one of us are thinking about. But there's like it's not a huge move, but cars we had talked about, I would have still loved to seen the Jalen Darden move, just to see,
absolutely,
give him, lightning in a bottle, see what you have. Because now, I mean, Pettis got hurt, so maybe he's out. I know Claypool is back, but limited. So tomorrow's going to be a very interesting day for him to see if he's going to still be limited.
I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I do too.
It's, there's some of this, and I to a degree, I understand this. Shane and I think have both been on records that the biggest issue for Tevin Jenkins has been
Tevin Jenkins talent
himself.
Yeah.
So I think that's there. But if you early on in the season, when you looked at it and you go back and look at the impact that Brisker and Gordon have had, I think, you really see that. I think, that has been the real reason that they made the picks. We've seen that now. So I think if you look at positions of need, I really thought that they could do more with the wide receiver room and the offensive lineman move, and they were way too comfortable with below average names there, thinking that schematically they could do something.
Yeah, because Cars, Mooney, Claypool, and Velus Jones are going to be here next year.
That's it. Cole Kmet.
Yeah.
Herbert, Khalil Herbert. Those are the only guys that are probably locked in stone.
Yep. So it's going to be wide open.
Yep.
But just looking in the chat here anymore, I know we're about pushing 2.5 hours, so we'll probably wrap it up here. But we wanted to come to you guys and give you a little bit longer show. TTNL, we don't usually take little breaks, in season like this, but Phil's been under the weather pretty good, not loving life. Claudio is enjoying some family time in Italy with his
he's already in the
family.
Off-season mode,
Yeah. Claudio thought he didn't know that they extended the season. He thought they reduced it to 14 games.
He thought we were going to just end things because of the World Cup.
Nobody knows where Bratcher is.
Who?
Yeah, I think that's his name. Was that his name? I forget.
I don't know. Not sure.
But no, we wanted to give you guys a little bit longer of a show. We'll see you Sunday. But Cars, I think it's before this new year hits. I think we should do our little Cars Keys shout out section of what we're thankful for and what we're looking forward to real quick in 2023.
I think, so again, I said it last time, right? I'm really thankful with the way that everybody's just been on board, jumping into the show, being really active in chat. I'm still kind of disbelief that people actually will listen to me. And I know my wife really agrees on that one as well. So thank you all very much. I think, my hope for 2023 is a lot more stability for the TTNL family, like not just us, but everybody that pays
I'll sign
attention.
the fuck up for that, Cars.
Yeah, just give me some stability, a streak of good news and good things happening for once. And that's probably it for me.
I hear you, bro. It's been a crazy, crazy, crazy year for me. But no matter how bad it was, medically with people in my family and, going through everything with Riley in 2021, it can always be worse.
Yes.
You see a lot of these Christmas commercials and stuff like that. And the kids that are so sick, they can't be home. And, I get to, even though my daughter can be a gigantic pain in the ass, I still love her, but I look across the room and I'm like, wow, we've had a tough year, with my family, with my mom and with my dad and with Ela's father, along the ways. But you just look at the 5 seconds you look at your kids across the room, and you realize how lucky you have it and that they're able to be, here with you every day and healthy and happy and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm just thankful for that first and foremost, because no matter how bad it gets, there's always somebody out there that's got it worse.
Absolutely.
People that, lose their children, people that lose their loved ones unexpectedly. And with the weather has been crazy here. We didn't get to go anywhere for Christmas and spend it with family because there was a travel ban. We got some crazy, crazy, crazy weather. So Ela and I and the kids just stayed huddled up here in the house, and it's crazy. Like, you couldn't even see off of our front porch because it was 65-mile-an-hour winds. It was a complete whiteout. And then today it's like 55 degrees here, and the
snow's gone.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just a few days apart. But no, appreciate all you guys. I'm glad we got to do this show unlocked, get everybody in here, and thank all you guys. TTNL is still going to be putting out all the great content, a little bit less of it this week, but we'll be back at it this Sunday immediately after the Bears game with BHL. Cars, thank you. I didn't really, I always had confidence in this show, but I think it's exceeded my expectations.
You had no confidence. It's okay. You can.
Just I'm a big Cars supporter. You know that. I came to you and kind of put it on the table, and you're like, yeah, dude, that'd be fucking awesome. Do you think anybody's gonna watch? And I'm like, no, dude, there's a lot of people out there that love cars, but I think it's pretty safe to say that Cars Keys has become really a staple on this network moving forward. And I think a lot of people love it and a lot of people look forward to it. You can always tell when you schedule a show, there's always people waiting in the chat room. There was people there last night when I scheduled the show. I'm like, man, what are these people doing? There's people writing first, and can we just start it right now? So yeah, I'm thankful for all that. Thankful for everybody at TTNL. I think we all deserve a healthier year for our loved ones. Hopefully that happens. But if it doesn't, we all have that family bond, and we'll put our heads down and move forward. But other than that, man, you got anything else?
No.
Perfect. I guess that's all. Fuck Hyundai. And
fuck that company. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll get the fuck out of here. But I think that's it, man. This is all I have to say about that.
Give me some fucking names.
Give me some fucking names, Cars. We'll see you guys on BHL as soon as Bears Lions go final. BHL this Sunday. We'll see you then.
Get the fuck out of bed, bitch. Go. Get up, and then they got go.